पवार कराड सर. हॅलो कराड सर.
Welcome and the chairperson of this national webinar, Honorable M. Bedkar sir, under whose inspiration and motivation the college has been conducting a series of national and international webinars. Till today, hundreds of webinars have been conducted on different topics related with various fields. And these webinars are benefiting students, researchers and teachers and the people with the connected fields. I welcome him heartily on behalf of the organizing committee of webinar series. I am very pleased to welcome today's chief guest and keynote speaker, Honorable Ronald A. Geobey from Ireland, and he is an author. I welcome him heartily on this virtual dais for this national webinar. I also welcome all honorable organizing committee members. Vice Principal P.H.D. Mr. Karanje sir has been awarded with prestigious award, New York City Big Book Award for his book Gods of Kiranis. He has his Ph.D. from Trinity College in Dublin. He is data analyst, research designer and also literature reviewer. He has many publications to his credit, such as From Egypt to Babylon, the Jeroboam story in the reformulation of Israelite identity, Joseph the Infiltrator, etc. at Trinity College, Dublin. And today we are very fortunate to hear such a wonderful speaker who will enlighten us on all the aspects of the topic learning English in context. So on behalf of the organizing committee of webinar series, I am pleased to invite today's keynote speaker to deliver his keynote speech. Please welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that that introduction. It makes me sound much more qualified and achieved than I feel myself sometimes. But it's great to be here. It's nice to be representing the company I work for, Yashmi Consulting Limited, and we host the free English learning platform EnglishLogica.com. And it's in that capacity today that I'm presenting this learning English in context, this subject. So it's 12:30 p.m. here in Ireland, so you guys are probably close to finishing your work day and looking forward to the weekend, but I'm only about halfway through. So so if you're all ready for me to start, I have my presentation, and hopefully that'll take up maybe about 25 or 30 minutes, and then you can have some questions afterwards if you feel. Okay, so I'm just going to present now and share my screen. So I hope you all can see my screen. Feel free to unmute yourselves and let me know if you can't see it.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So English learning in context. As I say, so my name is Ronald A. Geobey, Ph.D. I'm the project manager with EnglishLogica.com, and as well as some other different things I've done in my past. Occupation, you might say, is as an author of the Kuranis series, which is a science fiction fantasy series. These are the first two books, and as was mentioned there, I received an award for the first one, Gods of Kuranis. and Pawns of the Prophet is due out in June of this year, currently on pre-order. From Egypt to Babylon then was this is the adaptation of my Ph.D. dissertation, and that dealt with the development of Israelite identity in relation to the Exodus story. Some of you might know the Exodus story from the Jewish and Christian Bible. So what we're going to talk about today then is the advantages of learning English in context. As I said, the EnglishLogica.com platform has been developed with this concept in mind, that the best way to learn English is in context, and thankfully and happily lots more platforms are moving towards this way of working. Our platform is completely free, all our content on it. But so the problem we're addressing is that, as you can see, this simple example here of people might used to learn by just moving through lists, alphabetical lists of content, and we found that this wasn't a very good way to learn. It wasn't conducive to recall and to knowing when and where and in what situation to use certain words and phrases. So the problems were that it was randomly curated material, of course, and if something is just presented alphabetically, there's absolutely no way that it has any context whatsoever, no relationship to how you might use it in the real world. And what we have seen with people learning English is that they want more and more to know, well, what language can I use in this particular situation and this particular context, whether that's in a social situation or a professional situation. And when it's not presented in context, it's very, very difficult to recall what you have learned, because context triggers our memory and helps us to use what we've learned. So context can be thought of in terms of filling in the gaps, and that you understand maybe the surrounding situation or the surrounding language, etc., but it's something might be missing in the center. But the more of the context that you understand, the more easily you can fill in those gaps, and you can apply the language that you've learned and understand the words that you've taken on board. So context comes from the Latin word contextus, which means to weave or bring together. And so that's a very apt way of understanding context, that everything comes together in your memory when you experience a particular situation. Now, there are many different kinds of context, more than just the three I've mentioned here, which are cultural, social, and linguistic. And you probably all be aware of that. Certainly, me here in Ireland, I have a very different cultural context than any of you see in India or any other countries, and there's different ways that we will address people and speak to people, different levels of respect and interaction, etc. And you can see that coming out when you consider cultural context in conversation and interaction. But we're going to focus on primarily linguistic context. There's some aspects of social context as well, but primarily linguistic. So people always ask me when they're reading the books that I've written, and this, even native English speakers who are as old as me and have as much experience as me with the language, and they ask me, I don't understand those big words that you're using, or I've never heard those words before. How do you know those words? And because we wouldn't have learned them in school. So, like a lot of people would know nowadays, that the more you read, the more you learn, and you definitely expand your vocabulary by learning, and that is learning in context. Listening to people talking, listening to music. A lot of people love listening to music, and of course we've heard this time and time again that people who are learning English as a second or even third or other language will listen to the popular songs of the day, and they'll learn lots of different phrases and how to speak English, but it can often be misleading, because sometimes that's not necessarily how people speak in everyday conversation. Plenty of opportunities nowadays to watch things online, whether it's on YouTube, Netflix, or any other streaming platforms, TV shows and movies. And every time you engage with another language presented in any of these media, you're going to be learning in context. And again, that refers to recall as well. When you know that you are in the middle of a particular situation or in the middle of a particular conversation or a sentence, then if you have experience at all in the past, you can trust your memory in this regard, and it will trigger those memories for you and help you to know what to say. And it definitely helps you to anticipate what comes next in any given situation or conversation. So with the linguistic context, what learning in context does, I remember this when I was in university. I was learning biblical Hebrew, which isn't even the same as modern spoken Hebrew, and what I was able to do after a certain amount of time, it took some time, but when you understood the words that some of the words that were existent in a sentence, you were able to identify some of the words that you may not know. So in this context, you identify words you don't know because of the words that surround them, because of the words that you do know. So for example, here we have just the sentence, different kinds of context, and other options. If you didn't know what the word kinds is, you might think about the different sorts or different ways of context, and sometimes those very close synonyms can help you to move closer to the real meaning of the word and understand what the word is in the context. So nowadays, I'm sure we're all familiar with this. Your predictive text on your mobile device, or whether you're in WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or any of these instant messaging platforms, even now in your Gmail, you will type "Dear Sir," and maybe you'll say "further to our recent conversation," and your Gmail program is anticipating what comes next based on popular speech, commonly used words and phrases, and all you have to do is swipe and it'll complete it for you. Of course, your devices are also learning from the language that you're using and the sort of syntax and so on that you use on a day-to-day basis. So it can even help to switch your devices to English if you're learning English, or have another device that you might only communicate in English. And this is what your device will do for you. It will expand your library. So anticipate what comes next, and you can see there may be other options. Anticipate what comes after or over or up. And they're just common words that might come with after the word comes. So learning in context certainly improves recall. As I said, as you engage with other situations, other conversations, they will trigger the information that you have taken in before. And as I said, you should always trust your brain and trust your memory, because it's taking in a hell of a lot more than you give it credit for most of the time. So after that very brief introduction, we can talk about this after the presentation if you like, but these are the areas of our website, EnglishLogica.com, that we're just going to have a little look at. Sorry, I'm just taking a glass of water here. So we're going to look at spoken English vocabulary, and we have some big databases on our website with thousands of entries. But our spoken English vocabulary is curated with a mind to give you commonly used and popular language. So it's not like those lists that you would just go on and on and on through. And you'll find this with a lot of exams like GRE and GMAT, etc. They are words that you don't necessarily hear native English speakers using anyway on a day-to-day basis. And so a lot of time is wasted. So what we have done across all of our content is we have focused on language that people use on a day-to-day basis, and it's very, very popular and commonly heard. So I'll go through each one of these then. So the spoken English vocabulary, as I said, at the moment it has about 2,000 entries, but while that some people, some websites might say, well, we have 100,000 entries, but a lot of that is completely unnecessary to learn, and it's really not going to help you. This is an example of one of the idiom entries, so an idiom, a bit of elbow grease. And you'll see what we've done here is we've presented all of this information in a certain way to help you maximize your learning potential here. So we give a little bit of analysis, which sometimes might be the etymology or the background of the word or the expression. And then we'll also give you maybe some ways to use it, some advice on how to use it, because often you don't get advice on whether that might be insulting or that could be taken as a derogatory term. And of course, nowadays, everyone seems to be offended by everything, so you have to be very careful how you use language. So our analysis will always advise people as well. We break this down then into the contexts. As I said, you have social contexts and professional contexts. And while they may seem polar opposites, sometimes there is some overlap. And we'll tell you whether these are advanced use or basic use in any of these entries that we have. How to memorize then is very much about putting these idioms or phrasal verbs or words into just a little bite-sized context, so you can it will aid recall tremendously. So a bit of elbow grease, it's stuck in the middle here of, it's nothing that a bit of elbow grease won't fix. So that should give you an idea related to its meaning. And down in the further suggestions then, we try and keep these as relevant as possible. Again, working in context, so you have make an effort, put your back into it, and painstaking. So they still have the conceptual context of a bit of elbow grease or working harder, hard work and effort. So the next really valuable way to learn English in context is focused on collocations. And collocations are just words that commonly go together in a given language, and in this case the English language. They're associated with each other. So carry through, calculated risk, break even, just some little examples here. So in the word generate, for example, so the verb to generate, these are just some common collocations: to generate interest, to generate income, generate capital, generate waste. And so our pages, our collocations pages, and we have some videos of collocations as well, and these are designed to help you learn in context based on a word, and that will aid recall. So you know that the word generate comes up, and suddenly you're reminded by this collection of words that might come with it. And again, the context will determine which words you associate with it. So like I said here, we have some videos, and these are on our YouTube channel, but also embedded on our website as well. So collocations would keep a commitment, break a promise. So you have lots of different ways to use that, and the lists go on and on. So next, then, focusing on situations and themes. And so these are real world contexts in which you find yourself. And people will often come to us and say, well, I have an interview next week, or what sort of language would I use, or I'm going to be setting up a meeting, or I'm arranging a presentation, and so on. And there are popular and common phrases that you'll hear people using again and again, and it's quite sort of relaxed and casual language. And a lot of these, I think people make the mistake that professional situations require really lofty, professional, sophisticated language, and that's not always the case. And we have seen here, even in the past couple of decades, I've worked in some major corporations like Xerox and Hertz and so on, and the language is much more user-friendly and much more casual than it was. And maybe that's the American influence coming in. It usually is in these cases. So like this in a meeting here, for example, someone might open with, I'd like to get things started, let's get the ball rolling, if I can have your attention, please. So we have our videos. This is just a snapshot of one of our videos. I think you've gone off track. So every one of our videos will keep things in context. You will see the situation that people are in and the language they're using, and then we'll highlight the particular language that we think is worth hanging on to. And then this is just a snapshot of the pages, the web pages themselves, which is just the same information presented in a different medium. So in a presentation then, same again. If no one has any questions, I think that's all for now. So I'm sure all of you have used some of this language in presentations, but this is just a way to remind people that it can be specific to situations, but it's also very flexible as well. Diplomatic language then, some of you may have heard of diplomatic language. This is in relation to soft skills. And a lot more people nowadays are asking about soft skills. How do I improve my soft skills? It's very much related to the human resources side of things. How do we deal with situations where people are in conflict, or tensions are high and so on, and you want to sort of deflate the situation. And we have entire pages dedicated to this on our website, and we have some videos as well. So maybe it's presented in terms of, instead of saying this, really harsh, negative language, that someone might take offense by or be upset by, why don't you say this? You can tone things down a bit. So would you mind if you did this? I don't think people aren't very good nowadays, and whether it's a generational thing, but they don't seem very good at taking criticism or handling being given out to, as we call it, or being corrected. So we have to mind what we say in professional situations. So this is just another one of our themes, innovative thinking. So when you're talking about innovation in the workplace, and this is a very handy mind map that we have on the website, just to think of some idioms and phrases that are together in relation to the theme itself, which is innovation or innovative thinking in the workplace. So, don't go off on a tangent, or let's reach a consensus, or why don't we bounce some ideas around on their feet. So dedicated to answering specific questions in interviews, general questions in interviews, and then industry specific. See yourself in 5 years' time. And it's just some ways to open these questions. And often if you just learn the openers, then this can help you to complete the questions and to add on your own information. So just some handy ways. And what it does as well, it means that you aren't repetitive and that you learn different ways. Our synonyms pages, we have many synonyms pages, and we've started a brand new series which I present the synonyms and vocabulary. We've actually combined them into one big video now. It's vocabulary that covers synonyms and idioms based on a central theme. So you might have big, small, happiness, sadness, ugliness, love, hate, all those sort of things. And what we do is we list out the words we're going to cover, and as you can see in these tables here, these are common use or words that people use in everyday English language. Now, when we say this, we're focusing on native English speaking, and a lot of people want to know how do I interact with native English speakers more, and so I don't sound like I'm learning, or I'm learning the wrong words or things that don't necessarily belong in that situation. So that's where our common use language is focused on. The advanced exams, and when I started this job, I started to learn some of the language that was asked, and some of the words that were asked to you were asked to define in GRE and GMAT and exams like that. And I thought, people don't talk like this. This is not how native English speakers talk. But it seems to be a requirement that you learn this more sophisticated language that you might find in in more academic or literary contexts, and so it's also very good to learn this stuff if you're taking any advanced exams. And what we do then in these videos, we break these down, we look at each one of these words, we give a little bit of an analysis, and then we give a couple of examples. And of course it'll help with pronunciation as well, that I'm delivering these videos as well. So as well as all of them, we have lots more expressions videos, and these are being updated all the time. We put up a few videos every single week on our YouTube channel, and then there's always an associated page on the website. So these are all in themes as well, expressions with the word pop, or expressions with crack, to crack a smile, crack a joke, etc. Again, this helps with recall if there's a central theme, a central word. Collocations with pay. This one here is 5 English expressions you'll only hear in Ireland, so I don't know if any of you guys have been to Ireland or intend to go, but this is some language that you'll hear. And then, as I said, all the professional examples are put in context, so you'll see the language being used in the correct sort of situations. And then the guy just working on his laptop, so just an example of context. I am working on a new book and hope to bring it out in March. And so you see him working on his book, so that's all that is there. So for those of you who are learning grammar or looking at grammar again, it's always one of those things that people think they know grammar, and I think even as a native English speaker, we think we know grammar until we have to start looking at it very, very closely. But we have we've presented our grammar in lots of different ways. We have pages that use, actually, let's go back to the previous one, these timelines here, So you'll understand that, the different timelines, like I will have been working, this is future perfect continuous. Some of these are very awkward things to understand. And so the timelines are very, very good, and we situate the language along the timeline where it should be to help people understand that this is the focal point of your sentence. Because these tenses, some people find very, very difficult. And this is just our comics that we highlight exactly the tense that's being used. So this is a very large mind map. Don't worry, you don't have to take all this in. The point of this is that we have broken down the main contexts, the sort of linguistic context or situational context in which you will use the present simple here, for example. And we have one of these mind maps done for every one of our, every one of the 12 tenses and aspects. So if you're talking about a universal truth or fact, or if you're talking about schedules, jokes, stories and commentaries, etc., and we give some examples as well. So these are a quick way of understanding what tenses are suitable to whatever given context you experience. And then our World of Work comics, and this is, we're going to finish up here with this. We have brought to life just some situations and environments that people might find themselves in, and then we just highlight some of the language that we think is worth learning to use within those contexts. And the comics are just, they're a bit of fun. They took some time to create, I can tell you that, but they were a bit of fun to engage with. And it's a nice way of learning as well, because people nowadays are very, very visual, and they want exactly what they're learning. So as you can see then, on our website, we highlight the language that we think is worth learning. Then all you have to do is click View Expressions on the bottom. And when you click View Expressions, that will open up the definition, and it will bring you to the vocabulary database entry that is associated with those expressions. Okay, so that's everything I have for today. I don't want to go on too much about this, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course on our YouTube channel. And please remember that everything on our website is absolutely free. We are developing greater connections with colleges and institutions, and particularly in India. So if anyone wants to connect with us, they can. So I'm just going to come out of this here. And then I'll share it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your informative topic. Now it is time for the discussion. Please participate. Question.
Very good evening, Dr. Ronald. This is Professor Badiuddin Ahmad, representing Central University of in the Government of India. It was nice to hear your lecture, especially with the language of English, learning English in the context. It's always told that if you don't know grammar, you can't speak well. Is it fact? Is the grammar has got any linkage with spoken English?
We argue about this all the time. I think that people can get hung up on the terminology. I think that's the issue, and so sometimes there are still some aspects of grammar that while I feel that I have a very good vocabulary and I know how to express myself, articulate myself, and have relatively good grammar, I still don't necessarily know the terminology for the aspects of grammar that I'm using. So, and that's something that maybe I just take it for granted because I learned it so long ago, and it's inherent in how I speak. But I think that the problem with grammar is the way it's taught and has been taught for a long time, and people tend to move through these indexed or these content pages for grammar, section 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and it seems very, very monotonous. And I think that this is why we have focused so much on context. And the grammar, certainly, if it's a requirement, that you need grammar for your exam, then certainly you're going to need the terminology. And if you're asked, well, what tense is this, or what aspect is this, or is this a modifying term, or whatever, all this language, then certainly and unfortunately that's a requirement. But if all you want to do is converse with people, interact with people in the language, then I would highly recommend just immerse yourself in the context, and allow your mind to just realize, that's how this is said, and that's how this should be used, rather than getting hung up on the grammar terminology, because I think that slows people down. I found that myself trying to learn other languages, that it really slowed it down. But when I immersed myself, particularly in the reading and the listening, I found audio clips really, really good for language.
Exactly.
And then that helped me immensely, yes.
No, but it's apprehension, common apprehension, because I studied in my regional language, Urdu language, right from my first standard to my 12th standard. Then I started in the medium change, that's English medium. And till I completed my graduation, I have a hesitation to speak a language of English, because only that, what you call a subconscious in that, I don't know the grammar. Because when I speak my mother tongue, I was having no grammar actually. If you ask what is present tense, was past tense, that is, we don't bring grammar when we speak our regional or mother tongue. But when it comes to English, a sort of creation in the minds of the students that, no, you have to learn grammar first. In the process, they don't learn neither grammar nor spoken English. So how do you suggest what is the criteria we need to follow to our students so that they can speak good language?
I do think immersion in the language is important. And I think that the grammar can seem, as I said, it can seem so overwhelming that it'll slow people down. But I think there is a way that you can, because we don't focus too much on grammar on our website. We have found, and you might say that we have approached it in quite an unorthodox way, that we want people to learn visually and conceptually how the grammar actually plays practically, how it works, and especially with the tenses. I have found that and because my boss is from India, and a couple of our IT people are from India, and so we have a few people. So I've heard things like the article is misused or used wrongly. The might say the when it's not needed. The definite article, for example, and or so on. And a lot of that is to do with an issue what's called equivalence when it comes to language. And sometimes entire phrases, when you try and say, well, all of this equals exactly that, that's usually not the case. And that translation or transliteration from one language to another is what I think throws people a lot and confuses them, So I think when you immerse yourself in the language and try to identify what aspects of grammar are arising in it, that might be a better way. I think learning grammar needs to be complemented by the context.
Exactly. Right.
Side by side, because when you learn it in isolation, it doesn't seem to make sense, and you feel that, and again, I remember this in university, trying to look at that ancient Hebrew, and you could be 20 pages in and you've already forgotten what's 10 pages back, So it has made a lot of sense. So definitely that balance of context and grammar, so that you can see it being used, and only when it's practically applied can it make sense. That's what I think.
Good evening, Mr. Ronald. In the competitive exams like IELTS or TOEFL.
Hello? Yes.
Are idioms really used in the competitive exams like IELTS and TOEFL?
In IELTS and TOEFL, they come up, but I think they might come up more in the reading comprehension or anything. You're not really. It's not a big requirement. I mean, they do come up. Yes, they do come up. But you might find them in the reading, and you might, if you can point out things like an idiom or so on, then you know maybe that'll look good. But I wouldn't get too hung up on idioms. Really, it's one of those things that because they have such a figurative aspect to them, you have to know you really have to know exactly what the whole thing means, but we have we're still developing our IELTS and TOEFL section on our website, and actually Gianti Sanyal, she's actually looking after all that, and she is much more experienced than I have with IELTS. I never had to take it, so but she has. So you can check out our IELTS section. We have an IELTS TOEFL section, the exam section on our website, and that will give you the information that you need.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Ronald. I am Neha.
Good evening.
That was quite an informative session. I would just like to add something to the discussion that was done earlier about the grammar. Of course, I totally agree with you. It should not be pressurized. And we have, as being an English language teacher, I notice how students were scared or frightened if we start the teaching with directly grammar. Right? So, as I totally agree with you that it should be done through context. And the same thing, I just want to add here. Usually, you know that India is a multilingual country. So, how? Usually, we learn our mother tongue or native language so unconsciously, without worrying about grammar, right? Even the people, those who have English as native language, they don't worry about grammar at the starting, right? They learn as it is from the childhood, from their parents' environment and everything. So what I think is that it should be done naturally, unconsciously, as well as situational approach is the best one to learn English without pressurizing much on grammar. Slowly we can go into the grammar. And I have one question here, sir. Being a multilingual country, we have different accents according to our language. There are so many languages in India. So do you think accent is that much important or vital in learning foreign languages? Or if it is, how can we improve or help the students to develop without getting influenced by their mother tongue with the accent?
Well,
thank you.
I think there is too much focus on accent, and there is this idea that you have to learn a British accent or an American accent or whatever it is to get these things across. A lot of the issue is about, I mean, obviously pronunciation is important and diction, things have to be clear, but I think intonation is an issue. And what we even here in Western Europe over the past maybe 10, 20 years, we've noticed the younger generations, they start to do this thing that was very American, that they would rise at the end of their sentence. There'd be this inflection that made it sound like they were asking a question rather than making a statement. So they might say, "I went to the shop with my mother," and they say, "Well, did you? Why does that sound like a question?" So that's an issue of aspect or an issue of accent that we have mistakenly taken up. So I think that accent isn't as important as you think it is. I do find...
So we must give more importance on intonation and pronunciation instead of much about accent.
Yeah, because definitely that rise and fall, the cadence as you're talking.
In every language it is important, of course. We should just know that, I think, in English, how we use that expressions and, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Is there any more question?
What about the website you mentioned about? Will you please throw some knowledge about that?
Yeah, so EnglishLogica.com. So we started this project about 3 years ago, and I can actually what I'll do is I'll just show you it on the screen so you can get an idea.
Is there any question from anybody? Please.
Actually, I asked you Okay, he's showing something, sir. He's showing something. English language.
I'm not going to go into a demonstration or anything. So that's our website, EnglishLogica.com. Everything is absolutely free. You know, we have different vocabulary databases, spoken vocab, team vocab, advanced exams, and everything. You know, we're constantly developing this. There are exams sections, IELTS and TOEFL, business English. I've written some stuff, and absolutely everything there is free. As I said, I won't spend too long on that. But
Thank you, Mr. Ronald.
yeah, so let me just drop the link in to the conversation here so everyone can have it.
We'll take it from the chat box. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. There. And as I said, everything is completely free on it. So. And you can find it if you need to find it on Facebook or comment on our YouTube videos. We always interact with them, so if you need any particular information about any of our videos or any of our content, get in touch through any of those platforms.
Ronald, I asked you the one question which you didn't answer actually. What is suggestion for the youngsters who are other than the English medium as well as in India to learn English? Because as you rightly mentioned, I was hearing your lecture that listening constitutes learning. So how could the students really improve upon their conversation skills, their communication skills? What is the best source for them?
The best source. Well, my boss in India listens to a lot of American. He watches a lot of American TV, and he comes up with all these colloquialisms and all this vernacular that we say. You know, actually, people don't talk like that, Harry. We say, you know, but so I think it's a combination of things. If you want to improve your conversation, firstly, I was just listening to, instead of all these dry grammar books, I downloaded audio from websites, and I learned pronunciation, intonation, and was personally, I think that's the best way to develop your conversational skills. You know, I don't think you're going to get conversational skills by reading. You might expand your vocabulary.
Vice, our participants, we are very lucky today that the whole credit goes to Priya Pawar madam, who informed me about this institute, English Logica, and the director Ronald Geobey sir. So today we listen from this authority, a person who is doing something in English language in his country, and it's the free available literature, videos, all these things he is serving for the nation. And so sir, for continuing your work, we wish all the best to you. All my participants will take benefit of your website and will be get touch to you in future also. So thank you from our organizing team for best speech, and I like your PPT completely because every comments very with language, the pictures, situations, and the sentence was very perfectly we understood all. And thank you sir for your nice presentation to our participants. Thank you sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Just
Thank
wait
you, sir, for your concluding words. And thank you, sir, for your comments on the keynote speech. I also thank Honorable Speaker Dr. Ronald A. Geobey, who has accepted the invitation of our college and spared his precious time to deliver such a nice lecture which is going to benefit all of us. And he has also told us the importance of learning English in context. So on behalf of the organizing committee, once again, I thank him for his keynote speech. Thank you, sir. I also thank all the participants who have joined this webinar, and they are joining this webinar series every day. So I thank them also. I also thank all honorable organizing committee members for their efforts. And now I request all the participants to fill up feedback link so that they can receive their certificates. And with the kind permission of the chairperson and chief organizer of this webinar series, Honorable Dr. M. Bedkar sir, I declare here that today's webinar
just participate in this webinar. Before that, as Priya Pawar was saying that but you are very we are very lucky that you have accepted our invitation and joined here for this hour. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
Bye. खत्म